Pregnant women smell so wonderful.
Okay. Look at you, you're huge.
I'm actually doing a piece on motherhood.
Really?
Did you know amniotic fluid is actually urine?
Let's open that wine.
We're having a baby too, yay!
How far along are you?
I'm not actually pregnant. We have a surrogate.
I'm Kiki. I'm Wayne and Tina's baby surrogate mom.
Did you screw the surrogate?
Whoa!
I think Dawn is boning someone else.
Okay, suppose he is. They care?
Of course I care. There are 5 phases of a woman's life. I am in phase 4. You have to be a mother.
If government and businesses are gonna devalue women's work and make motherhood economically unfeasible, why not outsource it?
You see, this is why people hate liberals.
Huh.
I made fresh orange juice for Karen, folic acid. Tina is like a sperm donor.
I'm so not like a sperm donor?
Oh my God, I feel so fat.
Wow.
Let's welcome to the stage Alysia Reiner, David Allen Basche, and Madeline Di Nonno. Just to get things started, we celebrated International Women's Day on Friday. Did anyone do anything exciting in celebration?
I was shooting actually, but at the end of the day, Liv and I made a video. I work a lot with Equality Now, which is another amazing organization, and they asked a lot of different women to make a video about what freedom means to them. And I wanted to wait and do it with Liv, so if you check my Instagram, you can see what freedom means to me. Yeah.
That's excellent.
And we just did so many corporate presentations. We did a really large global presentation for Sony, for all the divisions of Sony.
Oh, great.
And then the day before, I did a big presentation for CARU, which is the Children's Advertising and Online organization. So it was a busy presentation week.
Yeah, I would imagine it's kind of peak season for you guys, so that's wonderful. I actually took the day off of work, not specifically for that. It was my father's birthday, but I got to see him spend some quality time with his granddaughters, which was incredible. So great. So we are here to talk about this amazing film, Egg. And as I said before, I've watched it a few times, and every time I'm catching more and more of the complexity of the characters and the nuances of really both what it means to be a woman and what it means when we consider or find ourselves faced with or decide not to move forward with motherhood, but also what it means to all of those around us. So, you know, how our partners perceive it, how our, you know, former friends from different parts of our lives perceive our roles. And there's really just a ton to unpack there. But I'd love to hear from Alysia and David kind of what brought you to this project.
Very quickly, we did a reading of it almost 10 years ago, and I felt when we did this reading that it spoke to things. The characters said things that I've always thought but had been afraid to say, and I loved it so much. And at that time, they were considering it for the stage, and I just was like, oh my God, I want to do this. I want to do this. And then I got really busy, like, first of all, making an actual human being, but then also on Orange is the New Black and all these other shows. And 2 summers ago, we were on a ferry boat from Fire Island, and I only bring that up because it was from the town of Kismet, so it was actually Kismet. And we bumped into the writer, and she said, I just did a rewrite on the screenplay version of it. Would you like to read it? And we were both like, yes. And I felt more than ever it was these things that no one was talking about the relationship between work and art and commerce and parenthood and career and friendship. And, you know, I was talking to someone recently about how we're changing so much in reference to gender norms, and how we talk about gender. And yet we haven't made those changes around parenthood and how we talk about the roles of parenthood. And we have such an antiquated version of what a mother and a father is. And it just hasn't caught up to our world today. And I wanted to bring up some of those issues.
Yeah, what she said. It had stuck with us. I mean, you know, as we're actors by trade, we both make a living as actors, which is great. You know, Alysia and another partner produced the the female-driven Wall Street movie called Equity. And I had just finished 5 years on a sitcom, and I thought I had a break. And Alysia said, "Hey, you're going to produce this with us. You get to be the associate producer." And I said, "What the hell is that?" And it turns out he runs around putting out all the fires. So I learned that. And then, you know, we really weren't necessarily sure we wanted to produce anything again. But then we met the writer on the ferry, and there was Egg again. And we said, "Oh, man, it's so good." And I, as a man, I love the male characters in it. I love what the male characters have to say. I was excited about it, even if it's quote unquote female-driven content. You know, I was all in. So when something sticks with you like that, you know, you got to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that it was like a multi-year process and it's just kind of sticking until it finds its final form.
And I'll also say, for me, I like, as a producer, I don't produce something unless I feel like it needs a voice. You know, there's a lot of stories that I'll read and I'll be like, "That's amazing, but I know this will get produced. Like, I know someone will do this." This is one of those where I was like, I feel like too many people would be afraid to make this movie. And I wanted to be the one who wasn't afraid to make this movie.
We're glad you did. That actually is a great segue, Madeline. I would love to hear, you know, from the lens of the Gina Davis Institute, why was this film so important to your mission? Building off what Alicia's saying, is that there was probably a lot of people who would pass on this because it's not something that is obvious to be spoken about. And why is that just even more important to be spoken about?
It's important in terms of on-screen, behind the camera, which I'd love for Alysia and David to talk about it. And, you know, there's a social imperative. So how do we take these kind of societal norms and turn them upside down, which they did, you know, beautifully. But from a business imperative, we just did a benchmark study which looked at 10 years of films, family films, G, PG, PG-13. And what we found is over the past decade, female-centric films generated 55% more at the box office. And that change happened in 2016, where female-centric films generated 7% more at the box office, and in 2017, it was 38% more at the box office. So there's this social imperative, which we're talking about, but there's the business imperative. So it's really, really important. But yet, even still, female lead characters, there's still a 2-to-1 ratio of male characters to female characters. So that's not what happened in the case of Egg, so it's really important. And then I'd love to throw to you to talk about behind the camera.
So our third partner on this, Michelle Gainless, who was the president of Comedy Central and who had left and was looking into producing her own stuff and who has now started a great production company as well. This was her first piece, you know, off of Comedy Central. And the thing that I loved about Michelle from the get-go, or we loved about Michelle from the get-go, was that she was equally committed to hiring all women across the board. So we hired all female heads of every single department. So we have a female writer, a female director, a female cinematographer. And I love to talk about her because she had never shot a feature, not because she wasn't insanely talented, but because no one had given her the opportunity. And I saw a short she did in Africa with children and a leopard. And they say, like, the two things you should never do are work with animals and children. And she did this spectacular, I mean, the film is spectacularly beautiful. But this was her first feature, and now she's shot like 3 more in the past 2 years. And
Female sound design. I
Yeah,
want to do
female
a few
sound
more.
design,
Head of sound.
female,
female set designer.
Wardrobe.
We had female camera.
Makeup, yeah. Camera op,
makeup,
yeah.
Production
Everything.
coordinator.
So, editor. So we did all female heads of all departments and then 70% female crew. And that felt amazing. And yes, the women made as much, if not more, than the men. And it felt amazing. And one of the things that I love to say is there was way less drama than any other set I've ever been on. You know, if we like have the gender norms of like women are dramatic and throw hissy fit, whatever, did not happen. There was no drama. We finished our days on time or early every day, and we were shooting sometimes like 8 pages a day.
Wow.
And it was an incredible experience, and I think my favorite part was the emails from women and young women who this was their first job on a set, and they wrote to us afterwards and said, like, I've been on a couple sets and it's not like egg. Even our production designer recently wrote us and she's like, I still haven't had another experience like egg. And they said, I haven't, like, other sets weren't like this, but you gave me hope and you made me feel like I can create that in the future. Like, when I'm the boss, I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna hire more women. And that's really why I'm sitting up here with this woman, is because way before I made this movie, way before I made movies, she inspired me, and the Gina Davis Institute inspired me about, if you can see it, you can be it,
Yes.
both on screen and off. And that is so deeply important. I'll never forget when I first heard the statistic of when you watch anything, even a cartoon, 77% of the characters are male, which means any girl watching any media feels like she's a minority. Like, that's a ridiculous concept. Women are 50% of the population, but no matter what they're watching, when they're watching any screen, they feel like a minority.
And just to add some context to that, our friends at Common Sense Media do a lot of analyses on media consumption. So your average tween in the United States is engaging and watching media upwards of 6 hours a day, and teens are still engaging with media and watching about 9 hours a day. It's more than sleeping, school, anything else they're doing. So when you think about media impressions and you think about the repetitiveness and how it's being reinforced, they're seeing that stereotyped media image over and over and over, and it does make an impact on how they view the world, how they view each other. So it's very significant.
Actually, is a question for you on that, because we were talking earlier. I feel like I'm starting to see more female leads, more female-driven. We're starting to see a lot of female superhero movies. Is this the case of being hungry and seeing signs for food all the time, or are we really seeing a shift in the industry?
Well, in terms of this benchmark study that we just did, you know, unfortunately, 10 years later, it's still a 2-to-1 ratio of male leads, you know, to female leads. And women are 52% of movie-going audience, and we're 51% of the population, so we're not really being represented. And when we talk about people of color are 38% of the US population, but in terms of the past decade of film, they're still only 16.7%. And then if you really want to get into the intersectionality of it, which is a really important conversation, people with disabilities, people who identify as LGBTQ are less than 1% of any character in a film over the past 10 years, the top 100 films from the United States. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys are doing the work. There's another interesting facet to the film where Alysia, your character, Tina, is financially leading the partnership. It comes up in a way in a couple different conversations that she is, you know, leading the household from a contribution perspective. Yet she's spun as kind of, you know, not being woman enough or not being nurturing enough. Yeah. And when you compare that with Kiki's character, who is very needy and very dependent, and, you know, the men, sorry, David, are like tripping over themselves to take care of her. Talk about that a little bit, about that storyline.
I think you should talk about that.
Yeah, talk about it, David.
Yeah, I believe the line in the film where Tina, Alicia's character, is accused of not being nurturing, and kind of comparing the women in the room, and she says, "I'm not nurturing." And she says, "Look at her. She's a fucking train wreck." Mm-hmm. Right? And the power of the powerless woman, no man can resist. Mm-hmm. Right?
And additionally, my character, you find out in that moment, is supporting her husband. Is you know, and like, how is that not nurturing? And she says, like, look, I support, you wanted to do this, I supported that. You wanted to do this, I supported that. You wanted to do this, I supported that.
It's never enough. Yeah. That is never enough. That's an interesting thing. And it is fascinating to see the shift in society. You know, we were talking about this earlier, from, you know, women who are breadwinners in their family and make more money than their husbands do. And in this case, I think it was one of the things I really liked about the film when I read it, even before we made it, was Don, my character, is, you know, very happy to be the wealthiest person in the room. He's fairly certain of that, even though none of us know anything about anyone, right? Mm-hmm. But he makes that assumption. And he's perfectly fine with that. And that gives him power over people, especially over women. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very interesting thing to see that when a woman is an artist, self-assured, financially stable, financially independent, and speaks her mind, you know, it's fascinating to hear what people have had to say about that character in the film. Yeah. And I like that. Don judges everyone in the room. And we're all judging everyone all the time, but a little more so. That's what makes it fun. Don gives voice to some of the stereotypical misogyny that we're hearing all the time. And I don't like him, but I liked the chance to do that, so that people will go, oh, or people will go, oh, he didn't just say that. Did he just say that? Yeah. There have been
a lot of audible groans when Don said.
I get very happy about those, yeah.
Well, I have to, just knowing you, it was making me laugh at every turn because it was so antithetical to who you are, but it's almost like, and because it takes place in this loft throughout the film, mostly in this main area, you kind of get this insular feeling of almost being in somebody's head, and you have all the different judgments or different aspects of what could be firing off, and there's a tremendous amount of judgment, and it's coming across both genders, and it's coming across different parenting decisions, and it really, to that end, I'm curious, did you guys have to let go of any of your preconceived notions coming into this film in order to portray these characters? Like, how was that for you? That's a juicy one.
I know.
I mean, yes, right? As actors, we always do, because we're not, unless we're playing ourselves, then you know, then we have our own preconceived notions. But characters that you inhabit always have preconceived notions. Sometimes that's your way in. Sometimes that. I mean, with Don, honestly, he's such a judgmental asshole that I was like, got it. Yeah. I know that guy.
I know that guy, yeah.
Yeah, we all know that guy.
Yep.
We may work with some of them.
Yeah. Maybe,
but,
I don't
probably
know.
not here at Google.
I don't know.
Where's the camera? Not here at Google. But we all know those guys. And I had, and honestly, I was on a set that was 70% female and fairly invisible unless I was in front of the camera. And that's not a criticism, it's not a complaint. So I had to set aside my preconceived notion of, well, I'm a man and I'm producing a movie and I'm one of the big bosses. And everybody's gonna, come on now, let's do what I say to do. Go on, fall in line. Not that I was ever that guy, but I was in a room full of smart women, and things were getting taken care of, and I was kind of like, it's okay if I don't have to. You know, Alysia was talking about drama. Like, I don't have to yell. I don't have to. Yeah. I don't have to be typically male or loud or to get things done. Things seem to be happening just fine, and it's okay if I'm not seen. It's because there's no problem, there's no fire to put out. Like, so I had to kind of adjust what I thought my role was going to be as producer in that way, I guess. Was that change to you, the dynamic of the set and the dynamic of the relationships? Was that palpable to you as well from previous films you've been on? Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up because for me, as an actor playing Tina, like Tina has a lot more preconceived notions and judgment and her way of doing things than I do. Like, I think as a human being, one of my biggest goals is to sort of strip away as many biases as I can, because that makes me a more open artist and more able to play the widest variety. It also makes life more interesting. I'm just I find life much more fun if you're really willing to listen and wonder. Our production company is called Too Wonderful to Be Limited, like two people full of wonder. And my biggest goal as I grow and age is to keep wondering. Like, I feel like people tend to get more and more narrow and they hang on to their beliefs more and more as they age, whereas small humans are much more like, I wonder, I don't know. And I want to stay like that wonder place as long as possible. And I think Tina feels like she knows things a lot more than I do. But in reference to the dynamic of the set, it was very surprising, I think, to everyone. And I didn't realize what a white male I was married to until we were in this dynamic.
Oh, by the way, they're married.
Oh, yeah. He's a really evolved feminist white male, but you put him in a room with a lot of powerful women and he's still a white man, and he still can fall, like we all as women can fall into seeing him as such, and he still can fall into those stereotypical roles, like we all fall into our roles sometimes
100%.
On and off camera without realizing it.
Yep. Actually, let's roll. We have a couple clips. Let's roll the first clip here.
I forgot. I'm not actually pregnant. We have a surrogate mother.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, a surrogate.
Yeah.
We know a gay couple who did that.
We do?
Yeah, the guy who did our window treatments.
Okay.
Did you have to go through all that awful IVF fertility stuff?
No.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, I can't. I mean, we can. This was more of an option.
Okay.
Sort of a utopian pregnancy.
A utopian pregnancy.
It's sort of dismantling and restructuring of the traditional family unit, a redistribution of roles to a more shared economy kind of thing.
Kinda.
You're the first people we've told we don't really have that wrapped down yet.
So you can have the baby yourself?
Right, yes, we can. We choose not to.
You're paying someone to have the baby for you?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, I love this clip because you come up with the notion of language, and you're like, we don't have the wrap down yet. And I think this is something that, we all have these judgments, we all have these opinions that we bring with us into certainly family dynamics, and this assumption of how things should be or how they can roll off the tongue or not. And when we tend to go outside those lines with what we expect, that's where we really start to get tongue-tied. And that's why I love the vulnerability of showcasing your character, just working through that with exactly the judgments that you would expect. What? Huh? Why? What? Talk to me a little bit about the importance of that language.
Language is such an interesting thing, and as an artist, there are some writers, for example, who are very specific about language. Aaron Sorkin doesn't want you to change a single word or period. And other writers are much more open. Risa, our writer in this, was somewhat open, but interestingly enough, our director didn't want us to change a word. She's like, she felt, and she's written and directed things, and in this case, she was just the director, and she felt that the writing was so precise that she didn't want us to change a thing, and she didn't want us to improv a lot. but she wanted it to feel like
Yeah.
improv. So that moment that you just saw, even though I'm floundering for the words, that was all written as such.
Oopsies, yeah.
And language in our culture, I think we are in this moment where we don't have language for a lot of what's going on in the world, and we're creating new language.
Yep.
You know, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as gender fluid and non-binary, and we have a 10-year-old, and that is it just is for her, and that's such a beautiful, miraculous thing, because we as a culture are evolving. But this, as I said earlier, like the way we handle parent roles has not evolved. Like my daughter knows how to describe her gender fluidity so much better than we as a culture know how to describe parenthood. And that's, to me, a problem, you know, and part of what we were looking to delve into, and sometimes it's my deepest hope, why I'm an artist, is that we can express these things and delve into them in art as a way to bring up conversation to then move our society forward.
Yeah, and I think you were alluding to that too, and I'm thinking back to you guys on the boat, of this being a story that some people would shy away from because it does unpack those things, and you can even see the characters questioning themselves of, am I happy? Is this what I wanted? Was that decision the right decision for me? And you know, it's just very human, that grappling, and I think we don't see so much of that. I mean, certainly, Madeline, within the industry, where there's a lot of glamour and sheen to everything, we don't see the characters really crumble as much on these definitive parts of their lives. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, when we look at attributes and careers, only 15% of female characters in TV and film, and this is from our 2018 data, which we haven't published yet, are shown working. And then
15%?
15%, just showing, you know, working. And when you look at also the ageism of it, which is another thing in the movie, you know, most female characters are shown in their teens. Most of them are shown under 19. Only 30% are shown in their 40s, and only 3% in their 50s. And so when you think about motherhood and women having children at an older age, that's not something that's really being reflected, in the media. And then when you think about kind of the caretaking of it, there's very few men depicted as caretaking, and when they are, you see a lot of the bumbling dad.
Yes.
The silly,
not doing it
lazy,
well,
bumbling dad. And we know from our friends at Promundo, which I happen to sit on their board, that, changing the dynamics of masculinity and really reflecting that in the media is important, because most American fathers want to spend more time. I think it's nearly 70% want to spend more time with their children, and that's their data, not our data. So, media is not really keeping up with how our society is changing.
Yes.
What do the other 30% of the dads want to be doing, by the way? Just curious.
Well, it's funny, when we did a study on gender bias in advertising, 48% of the female characters in ads were most likely to be in the kitchen, and the men were at sporting events and driving around in cars. So that's where they were, driving around.
What they're doing.
I don't own a car, so we'll get there.
We have one more clip. Go ahead with clip number 2.
I can see why you guys chose her.
Oh, shut up.
I'll get you something to put on.
Hi, I'm Kiki. I'm Wayne and Tina's baby surrogate mom. And you are?
I'm Karen.
You're pregnant too, right?
Oh, no, I'm not pregnant. I'm kidding.
Oh, God, good. It's always so horrible when you ask someone if they're pregnant, and then it just turns out that they're just, fat.
Oh, well, I'm pregnant and fat.
Oh, God, no. I didn't mean that you're, sorry. No, I mean, obviously you're pregnant.
Well, doesn't she look wonderful?
Yeah, you have such rosy cheeks.
Here.
Oh, thank you.
A awkward.
Yes, so awkward, but also so relatable. And I think there's so much packed into that one exchange, whether it's, the body shaming, hypersexualization of Kiki, and then there's the question around, is she pregnant or is she fat, and why does it matter, and why is this a public thing when women are carrying that, then it's all they can talk to you about, There's so much packed into that one exchange. Tell us about the scene.
Well, it's funny. I did an evening. I'm totally going off on a tangent because everyone's gonna watch the movie or watched it already, right?
That's right.
And I don't want to give anything away. But I did with Time's Up. I produced an evening about Rebecca Traister's book, or inspired by Rebecca Traister's book, Good and Mad, which all of you should read. It's really the history of rage and female rage and anger. And I did it honestly because I'm afraid of my own anger. I'm afraid of anger. And so in that wondering way, when I find something that I'm afraid of and that makes me have a pit in my stomach, I'm like, go towards that and go explore it. So we did this evening, and we had a lot of different women find a passage about rage or raging to express. And so we had a comedian who I love because she's a woman, obviously. She is disabled, and she is Muslim. And so she is one of the most amazing women I know, and she does a comedy bit about being pregnant and about how you never should ask anyone if they're pregnant ever, or parents, because people will tell you, they will show you the baby pictures before you can even ask.
Yes.
So you never even, and it's not even just pregnant, it's parenthood. Because we assume that all women want to be parents, and that's a really big topic of this movie, is not all women want to be parents. Not all men want to be parents, and that's okay. A woman is enough, whether she's a mother or not. She's more than enough. And that we've created this standard and this norm that is completely inappropriate and lets go of any choice for women. And that's what enraged me about it. And it was another thing that made me really want to make this movie, is I want women to have all women to have freedom of choice in a full and complete way. So that's for me what that moment is about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting how you see the characters evolve from, pushing each other to each other's edge and then really coming to each other's rescue at the same time. And I think there's obviously the motherhood and the parenthood topic, but there's a lot to feminine relationships that's explored as well. And I found that really, really powerful.
That's my favorite thing about the movie, is these two women, Kiki aside sort of, who are old friends and really believe deeply different things, have made deeply different choices, but are willing to lovingly accept and listen to each other's choices without making the other make the same choice. And that, to me, is what true, authentic friendship is about. And it was another reason why this was so deeply important for me to make as a filmmaker in this moment, because it was, we read the script in October. The man people call president became president in January, and I met Christina at the Women's March, and which was the weekend of the inauguration, and I found out that she was childless by choice, and I thought, wow, how interesting to make this movie in this moment when women feel like an endangered species, and additionally, when 53% of white women voted for that human being, it's a little bit of a Voldemort thing for me. I realized I wanted to also make art about people listening to each other, even if they didn't believe the same thing. And that's incredibly important to me in this moment. Learning how to listen without judgment, or even if you're judging, shut the fuck up and try and really listen and learn something and ask as many questions and try and really open up your heart to what can I relate to here? What can I possibly relate to here? And I think these two women do a really magical job of that. And that to me is what the story, the core of the story became. And it wasn't I didn't know that that's what it really was most deeply about until the editing room, really. But in watching the edit, it was like, oh, it's really about being willing to listen and support, even if you don't necessarily believe the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I think that definitely came through, in particular, the scenes with just the two of them. That was very strong. I'm curious your take on that clip we just watched in terms of what you saw there from your...
Well, there's a few things. There's one clip that was in a little bit of it in the trailer where Kiki talks about kind of the 5 phases of being a woman, and the second phase is boobs, teens, and she talks about that's when you have your most power, but I'm in the 4th phase and I have to be, just a mother. And then there's the other scene where you first see Kiki and you completely see her, sexually objectified. And so when I think about that and I think about some of our new data, female characters are 6 times more likely to be hypersexualized and 5 times more likely to be verbally objectified. And I thought, and maybe you can just talk about it, but there's scenes in the movie that do it with such great humor and kind of, point fun at it. But truly that's what we're seeing, in all of our, family films. So I don't know if you want to.
I mean, it definitely was taking a ribbing at it. And that 5 phases, I'm obsessed with that 5-phase monologue.
You have to watch the movie.
One of the most brilliant things I've ever read, and Anna Camp does a genius job of it. And I love that character so much because she's kind of doing it to herself. Like her choices as a human being, the character's choices as a human being, are so fascinating. And the patterns she's going into, and without, ruining too much, but she's in a relationship with a married man, and these patterns that we fall into, and her choice of what she wears, which is written into the script, and we just followed that lead. That in a way she is choosing this stereotype and this paradigm of what a woman is. And it's the diametric opposite to what Tina is, because Tina's really interested in sort of breaking all those stereotypes. And then Wayne's in between trying to sort of navigate these two women, which is what makes it all interesting.
That's a very complex part of it too, because each character, David said earlier about Don, like we all know that guy. Each character, we all know that character, right? There's someone in our lives, or there was a time in our lives where we felt like we subscribed to very similar paradigms. So I definitely feel like there's that sense of identification that you can have through each of those characters.
It's also every dinner party we've all ever been to gone wrong.
Yeah.
And usually, I mean, I think we've all been to those dinner parties where someone says something a little bit off, and most eyes just kind of go to the plate, or someone gets an elbow under the table or a kick, and that's it, right? And then you just rip it apart on the way home.
Right.
Like on the subway ride home, I can't believe she said that. I know, what's her problem? Well, she's never had to work a day in her life, so she's blah, blah, blah. And he's blah, 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 right? And we all do that. And so, but we do it there.
Yeah.
We don't do it on the ride home. We do it there.
Right.
It's like we're at the table and someone says, why would you say that to me? The other person says, well, because I think you're X. And the other person says, you don't know me. I'm not. Why would you say that? Like, this is an idea of how we want to live our lives. And the person says, well, I don't agree with that. Like, so we get to live out that dinner party fantasy that we've all had of like, God, wouldn't it be great if you could just tell him like nobody likes to hear you talk about X, Y, Z. We don't give a shit, and you know, you don't seem to care about people and what like. It's that dinner party thing that I think, you know, that we've all wanted to talk about, and with subjects that we've all wanted to talk about, but are a little bit afraid to, like Alysia said earlier, or very afraid to. And I think that's part of. I hope that's part of what happens in the film. We've been hearing from a lot of people that have seen it that, you know, they have questions. They want to. Why did we do it this way? Why do we do it that way? You know, and that's great. That's what we want. It's not a. You know, you don't watch it and be like, eh.
Pretty Little Bow
What's next on Netflix?
It's not one of those. It
makes you
sits
think.
with you.
And, and a lot of people have said, I went back and watched it a bunch of times, and every time it's different, and I see different things, and that's really exciting and rewarding.
Well, there's a scene where, as Dave is describing, it's uncomfortable. It's almost like, I think this way sometimes when you watch Ben Stiller's comedies, like you're like, no, don't do that, you know. It's uncomfortable to watch because it puts you in that position where you feel that vulnerability of sharing something that you normally would just keep to yourself or share with your partner on the way home. But there's one scene where there's a question that comes out, and David, your character Don, just goes, well, that's a little personal. And it's, meanwhile, we're talking about the most personal things ever, but there's that dry humor to it.
It was about money. It was a question about money. It was a question about, like, does your boyfriend pay your rent? Like, why do you have to move out of your apartment? And we've just talked about her uterus, her life, her relationship, her identity as a woman, and then someone says, well, why do you have to move out of the apartment? And I say, well, that's a little personal. We don't want to get into
that. Well, that unfolds a whole other...
Money is a whole other...
Thinking back to your last project with equity, well, not one of your past projects with equity, is just the comfort around women and money, and certainly women and money as portrayed in media. And we talked a little bit about, you know, breadwinning women and primary earning women, who are 42% of our nation. And, you know, we're not seeing that showcased on screen anywhere. We're not seeing that pride, and we're not seeing that comfort.
That's my next project.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, so that's a great segue. What's up next for you guys that you're able to share?
Is there a part in your next project for me? That's great.
No, there are no men in it. No. Right now, I'm shooting The Deuce, which is so much fun. Oh my God, season was season 2 we shot it was the 70s, and now in season 3 it's the 80s in New York.
Costumes.
And the writing is so genius, and I'm so enjoying it. And Better Things, which I'm also on, just started airing like 2 weeks ago, I think this week. Sharon Stone is our guest star, which is really fun.
That's terrific.
I have a gorgeous scene with her. She was such a joy to work with. And
I'm gonna cross, just to keep things even. I'm gonna cross. Men can do that too.
And we just wrapped season 7 of Orange, and they never tell us when that's going to be out. But my guess is summer. But don't quote me; that could be a lie.
And is this the final season?
This is our final season. That's for sure. That's for sure. And I've definitely been mourning that a little bit.
I was going to say, how does that feel? That's a lifetime.
It hurts. You know, I'll miss the character because she was so extraordinary. And this season is quite epic in its social commentary on what's going on in the world right now. I'm really proud to be part of this season for that reason. But more than anything, I'll miss the people, because there's some spectacular humans, both behind and in front of the camera, who made that all happen. And I will love them forever, and I'll see them forever, but I won't see them as much. You know?
Not behind bars.
Yeah.
No.
We hope.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I mean, we never know.
Listen.
She's still curious.
Yep.
David, what's up next for you?
If Alysia hires me in her next project, then I'll tell you what that is when we get there. I just did a show on CBS called Instinct, and that was fun. And trying to get a job and being a hands-on dad.
That's the most important job.
I'm very proud of. And Alicia's a hands-on mom, but she's been a lot busier than I have, especially since Egg came out.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the laundry and the dishes and being a dad and.
And you're building tree forts.
We did build a tree house. There were power tools involved.
You've got
a little more stereotypical, but
big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Madeline, what does your season look like coming up with
We have a really rich research year. We're just about to publish the next iteration of what we call the GDIQ, which was generously funded by Google.org. It stands for the Gina Davis Inclusion Quotient, and it's a machine learning tool that automates gender, screen and speaking time, and actually race for screen time using audio and facial recognition. So we have a really rich partnership with Google, so we're really grateful for that. And this year we're releasing not only film, which we have done, but also TV. So that's been really important for us to evolve the GDIQ. So that's coming out soon for us. And then, as I mentioned, we're partnering with Promundo on a masculinity study. We're also partnering with Plan International on a study about girls' relationship to leadership. So we have a lot of really interesting research projects coming out. And then we also are commissioned to do a lot of research. So we've done a lot of research for leading brands, content creators, studios. So behind the scenes, a lot of people want to know how they're doing, and so we'll also conduct a lot of research that way.
That's so important. I'm so glad to hear it. We are a data-driven company here at Google, and I think the more you have data telling a story, while it may not be the story we all want to hear, it's telling a certain story, and only then can you start to see action and start to measure the progress. So it's very, very important work that you're doing. I'm thrilled that we're finding ways to partner together on that initiative. So Egg is available on Amazon and iTunes and video on demand.
Coming up on Hulu as of March 31st.
On Hulu, March 31st.
It's a great Mother's or Father's Day gift.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We actually flip Mother's and Father's Day in my house, so I get Father's Day. My
Nice.
Mother's Day.
And for anyone who's watching the Global Channel, aren't you coming out internationally?
Yes.
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 Yeah, we're premiering
March
in the UK,
31st,
March 31st.
we open in theaters, which is Mother's Day.
UK,
in the
Ireland,
UK,
New Zealand,
Yep.
Australia.
It's actually called something else there. It's called Motherhood.
I wasn't sure if you were going to share that. Yes.
Yeah.
So for our UK subscribers and counterparts, make sure that you keep an eye out for Motherhood.
And if you follow at Alysia Reiner, you'll get all the scoop about it always.
The updates.
Yeah.
Yes. And for the Gina Davis Institute, anybody that wants to learn more, there's some great infographics throughout there. And I just think some of the data just really makes you mindful. And that can be found at cjane.org. So thank you all so much. It was such a great conversation, and really looking forward to more success to come.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.